so exciting to be here. I was reminded that given my mature years, I was actually at the very first TED conference in 1984 in the Monterey Auditorium. And it was about this many people. And it was, you know, I know everybody tells these back in the good old days stories, but it really was back in the good old days. And by the end of it, you met everybody, and all the people who were in the audience were, of course, infinitely more interesting than the people presenting. But it was some of my best friends date from that time, so I'm very excited to be here. They needed somebody to kind of hold down the other end of the bell curve, so I'm delighted that I was asked to speak about one of my favorite subjects, which is entrepreneurship. And I have been an entrepreneur in several incarnations. I'll talk a little bit about some of my background, but one of the first things I want to do is just make sure we all have a common definition. Everyone has their own definition. There's no such thing as a right definition, but mine is an entrepreneur is someone who has the vision to see a new product or process and the ability to make it happen. And the people whose pictures you see here are representatives of entrepreneurs. You know, it's very important in my view, and I think it's particularly important when talking about this, for example, from the standpoint of a place like Maine, that we talk about entrepreneurs that are what I call no-tech, low-tech, and high-tech. So I tried to pick a couple of examples of people, you know, from all three of those. So whether it's Whole Foods, which I would say is by changing the process, just like Starbucks didn't invent coffee shops, but it changed the process, to you know, the media industry, which is where I come from, and I'll talk about that, to obviously, you know, the icon of entrepreneurship, which is Steve Jobs. So in today's world, you know, entrepreneurship has gone in and out of fashion. Sort of like the fall leaves in Maine. It's very much in fashion right this minute, so we're hitting it at peak season. But this has not always been true. And of course, entrepreneurs today are the rock stars of our era, right? The Steve Jobs book by my friend Walter Isaacson is one of the best-selling books on the New York Times bestseller list, and it is the flavor of the month wherever you go. Entrepreneurs are celebrities and rock stars. Or are they? My view of an entrepreneur is different. My view of an entrepreneur is crabgrass, not rock stars. I believe that entrepreneurs exist everywhere in the world. And in the last few years that I've been working for Secretary Clinton at the State Department, I've experienced that literally across the world. So whether you are in Lisbon or China or Poland or Norway or Belfast or any of the places that actually were those places before they were in Maine, you will find that entrepreneurs are ubiquitous. And what I have also found is that the essential ingredient to turning the entrepreneurs who are crabgrass into something much more beautiful is cultivation. So when I moved from LA, as in Los Angeles, to Lincolnville, Maine about 6 years ago, I found that I was surrounded by incredible gardeners who actually knew how to do this stuff. Los Angeles, which is my hometown, is not only a desert and basically been demonstrated to be inhospitable to most life forms, but it but it also, I had zero skill. So I got to Lincolnville, and all of these people, my neighbors, the Silvertons, and all sorts of other people were able to do all kinds of incredible things, and I had, basically, I was sort of talent-free. And so I was looking at things that I might be able to do given my particular background. And one of the things that I have done in my life and have believed very strongly for a long time, which is why I sort of title the work that I do now and this whole presentation as World Peace Through Entrepreneurship is help develop entrepreneurial ecosystems both at home and around the world. And the fact of the matter is that the difference between the crabgrass that we saw that in a persistent, stubborn, tenacious way is going to grow up through the concrete and the cracks in the sidewalk and the bubbling asphalt on the school playground in the summer, and it's going to do that. The difference between that and this garden is cultivation. And you can actually increase the odds for successful entrepreneurship by doing certain things that we know about. And we're very lucky in Maine that some of those things have started to happen. My friend Don Gooding is a leader in many of those. But the same is true around the world. And the fact of the matter is that there is an enormous difference between entrepreneurship in the United States and around the world, entrepreneurship development. So one of the speeches that I often give on this subject is what I call 97 Reasons Why Entrepreneurship is Good for You. Fortunately for you, that is not the one I'm giving today. There is one particular reason that I want to talk about why entrepreneurship is so absolutely essential, and in my mind, it's really simple. Entrepreneurship, jobs, political stability, civil society. Entrepreneurship is the single biggest creator of jobs in the world, and that has been true in the United States and around the world. In the United States, from 1980 to 2005, all of the net job growth was in small and medium-sized business, all. And even more recent statistics are that well over half, 2/3 of job creation has been in small and medium-sized businesses. Now, in the United States, of course, we have a terrible, terrible crisis because we have unemployment around 8%, which is absolutely driving our political process. It is the front page headline in every paper in America. It is the most important issue in the presidential election by far. Imagine, though, if our unemployment rate was 35%. Imagine if we lived in a country in which 70% of the population was under the age of 30, and their unemployment rate was 50%. We would find that we would be in a very, very unhappy place. And when you look outside around the world, you find that there is a very direct, clear correlation between economic growth and civil strife. It's very direct, and it exists all over the world. Now, in some parts of the world, the correlation is particularly worrisome, and one of those key regions is the Middle East. In MENA, Middle East and North Africa, the unemployment rate hovers around 30% overall. In Egypt, it's 50% for the 70% of population which is under the age of 29. So we have a problem when we're at 8%. What does the world look like when it's 35%? So let me just take 1 second here and pause for a short story break, which is how did this nice, fat, bald, middle-aged Jewish guy from Los Angeles end up in Lincolnville and then at the State Department? So the short version of this is that I was in the entertainment business because that's all we can do in LA. So I spent many years in the entertainment business. I was at Warner Brothers for a long time, where I was first head of strategy and then eventually head of the operating committee. Started several companies, was always very entrepreneurial, left Warner Brothers and started a .com in Marina del Rey, which sounds much nicer than it is. And then after my youngest son finished high school, I had my get-out-of-jail-free card, as I call it, and I was free to leave Beverly Hills and move anywhere in the United States that I wanted to go. I had retired at that point, and so it's perfectly obvious that I chose Lincolnville, Maine, and moved to Lincolnville, and I was sitting in my apartment, or my living room, looking out at beautiful Lake McGunnicook, when I heard President Obama give his now very famous speech at Cairo University in June of 2009, when he talked about the importance of changing the way the United States interacts with the Muslim world. And instead of living in fear and terror of each other, and instead of living on knife's edge every time we interact with each other, how about if we changed the conversation and talked about something happy and positive for a change? And one of the things that he mentioned was entrepreneurship, which piqued my interest because I have for a very long time believed that entrepreneurship is one of the single most important things that we can do to improve the foreign policy position of the United States. And at that point, I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to come to Washington and to join the State Department to work for Secretary Clinton to create a program which was called the Global Entrepreneurship Program, or GEP. So not wanting to completely abandon Lincolnville, I kept my house, I moved to an apartment in Washington, and I started commuting between the two, which I recommend to none of you to ever try to do. But what we were able to do is we were able to create a program that, as far as I'm concerned, is as American as apple pie or baseball. We were able to create the export of one of our core values. We always talk about movies and music and American culture and democracy and human rights as American values, and of course they are, and they are representative of our culture and our country, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse. But what we don't usually realize as Americans is that, and many of you who have spent a lot of time abroad will know what I'm saying is very true, is that one of the things that when you look at opinion polls, foreigners most frequently talk about, ask about, and associate with the United States is our entrepreneurial spirit. And even those who hate us most want some of that secret sauce. Recognize that that has been the driver of America's success. And so I have been on a campaign, sometimes a very lonely campaign, to make the promotion of entrepreneurship a core element of American foreign economic policy. For better or for worse, it began in the, as I said, as an outgrowth of President Obama's Cairo speech and thus in the Muslim world. So I ended up spending most of the last 3 years in Egypt, Indonesia, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. And I have been to Egypt, Indonesia, and Turkey almost 24 times each over the last 3 years, which I also do not recommend. But what I learned, especially in Egypt before, during, and after Tahrir Square, was that the young entrepreneurs who I was working with, and there are now 2,500 in my Egyptian Facebook group, were surprisingly similar to the young entrepreneurs in Belfast, Maine. They were not interested in politics. They were not interested in religion. They were not particularly interested in broad economics. They were interested in growing their company and building their business. How am I going to get funded? What should the price for my product be? What's the best distribution channel for this product? And what I realized is that this is a common language spoken all over the world, and therefore spent the last 3 years and just recently left the State Department and continue to do this work privately. The work was extraordinarily satisfying. I got a chance to interact with entrepreneurs, as I said, in many countries. This is me working with a group of entrepreneurs in Indonesia. The guy with the red and white striped shirt sitting across from me, Muhammad Iqbal, is the head of the Entrepreneurship Club at ITB in Bandung, which is about 2.5 hours southeast of Jakarta in central Java, which is the MIT of Indonesia. And this is his kitchen cabinet, and we are planning some programs for them for the coming year. So what I'd like to kind of end with is the notion that that entrepreneurship, to some extent, people are more skilled. Some people are more skilled than others. So people always ask me, are entrepreneurs born or grown? And my answer is both. But it is absolutely certain, and for me completely clear, that without consciously building the skills the ecosystem that is necessary for entrepreneurs to succeed, that they never will. And all of us really have a role in doing this. There are things that you can do locally, and there are obviously things that can be done internationally. My favorite thing, of course, is always to urge people to consider starting a business and think about what it is that you might do. And particularly in the course of doing that, reach out to others. You know, one of the interesting entrepreneurship statistics that I often quote is that only about 20% of entrepreneurs are innovators. 80% are commercializers. The vast majority of successful entrepreneurs did not think of their innovation. And remember, an innovation is a product or process. It's not just a product. So 80% of entrepreneurs are commercializers, and that's extremely important. And what you may find is that you're a commercializer, and you need to connect with somebody who maybe has the idea but not the ability to make it happen. So that's very, very important. The second thing is that in mentoring entrepreneurs, I tell people, you know, we all like investors, but my favorite people are customers. So the most important thing you can do for a startup is buy from them. Whether it is a local restaurant, whether it is a local framing shop, whether it is a local farmer, the most important thing you can do is buy from them. You can invest in them, both individually and through organized groups such as angel groups. Maine Angels is one of those. And you can get involved locally in a number of organizations, and I've listed a few of the ones that we're lucky enough to have here in Maine. Whatever you do, whether it is at the most local level or whether it is at the global level, where hopefully some of you will want to help in the kinds of work that I have done and continue to do to spread what we know in the United States abroad to help grow jobs and create the sort of political stability in civil society that relies upon them. In other words, I hope that everyone will consider becoming an entrepreneurship gardener. Thanks very much.